In and out of the Beltway, from large cities to small towns to the rural heartland, from sea to shining sea. This is Wayman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.
Welcome back to this week's show of Inside the News. Ben Brunson, Frank Vernuccio, myself, Guy Wayman. Ben Brunson, how are you doing on this day?
I'm doing great. It's another what qualifies as a winter day in Florida, around 70 degrees today. So it's not too bad.
There you go. Frank Vernuccio, how are you on this day?
Well, Guy, anxious New Yorkers are reporting a dangerous glow in the sky, but meteorologists have reassured them that it's actually something called sunshine, last seen several months ago.
Okay. Now, from the head office of Wayman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Frank, we want to know what you did last week. Go.
Watched with glee as the Trump administration continued to turn the United States around. One of the fascinating pieces of coverage that we're seeing on all the major networks and all the major news outlets is a gleeful reporting of any glitch in the Trump plans. For example, when they talked about when Musk asked employees to say, "What did you do last week?" Several department heads or agency heads said, "Well, no, you don't really have to respond to that." And the media picked up on it, pointing it as some kind of disaster in the Trump plans. The reality is, Guy, that the Trump administration is trying to overturn decades and decades of incompetence and corruption in the federal government. It's not going to be easy. There are going to be glitches in the road, but eventually they're going to get there. But the glee in the media over any minor glitch is just absurd.
You know something, Ben? It's amazing. When they laid off all those XL pipeline workers, and there are thousands of them laid off, where's the crying? Where were the tears? Oh, my goodness, what about these workers? But when it comes down to the Democrats and them spending the money, and the thing is, Ben, there's things behind here that they don't want people to see of the money being spent. Ben, go.
Well, that only gets uglier as we learn more. But, I, for one, am completely shocked that we would subject the 3 million employees, federal government employees, to management. That's unheard of. So it's quite shocking to the press that employees would be expected to do the things that happen in the private sector every day, like be accountable for what you do on the job, explain your value to your employer, that type of thing. Look, the Elon Musk is bringing the type of management practices that he has employed to create huge companies like Tesla and SpaceX and many others, Starlink, to create these companies from scratch and build them into modern, efficient corporations that are quite well run. He's just trying to apply those management techniques on, I would call it, on a small scale to the federal employee base. And it's shocking to a lot of employees that you would be asked to justify what you do every day and explain what you did last week. I, for one, find it refreshing and hope that there's no backing down from this. I've found it quite pleasant to hear that Donald Trump urged Elon Musk to accelerate and to get more aggressive in his attempts to manage the employee base. We need to drastically downsize government employees. We have way too many. It costs this country a fortune. We are going bankrupt as a nation. I pointed out to someone the other day, the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is quite striking on this issue of how do we handle the debt. The last administration exploded spending and then hired 87,000 IRS agents and implemented rules after rules after rules, new reporting requirements for everyone in order to make sure they go after every working class American and get every penny of taxes they can possibly abscond with. This administration wants to cut taxes. Where they want to make it up is by cutting federal spending dramatically. And I would say that their ability to cut at least $1 trillion a year out of just the current spending load is very real indeed. I think they're talking about goals of hitting 100 billion, a couple hundred billion. I think that's too modest because you learn about things every day. We learn that uh, a woman named Lucretia, who worked in the White House, was given a roughly $20 million gift on the way out, which was a contract for her little entity she had set up, which basically was a $20 million bonus of taxpayer monies to this woman. You were learning that Stacey Abrams and a couple of her well-connected friends were awarded a multi-billion-dollar grant to do what? I don't know, but apparently just to make them billionaires. You wonder why people like Stacey Abrams can be permanently on the road with no visible means of employment or income and somehow live a great lifestyle where she's traveling everywhere, probably in private jets most of the time. This is all funded with your taxpayer money. American taxpayers should be in a state of revolution, as far as I'm concerned. People are taking it way too kindly because this has been nothing but outright theft. We've been saying on this show for a long time. These monies go to well-connected Democrats. They are becoming multi-millionaires with taxpayer monies, completely unaccountable. It is just nothing but theft and thievery of the highest order to grant all these millions and billions of dollars to well-connected Democrats. And it has to stop. And I still say we've only seen the tip of the iceberg so far.
You know something, Frank, what I was surprised, and maybe I should not have been surprised, was the fact that there was a union for these people. I thought that they were just hired, and you're a government employee. I didn't know that there was a union for these people that, like Teamsters and stuff, Frank.
It's interesting. You go to one of the patron saints of the left, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who himself said that he thought the idea of unions for federal workers was a really atrociously bad idea. It shows you how far to the left the Democratic Party and the progressive movement in the United States has come. Even their own patron saints have said have said in the past what they're doing is absolutely insane. But the bigger question, and one I think that Ben circled around, was that for all this money spent, for all these people hired, has anything improved? Have we gotten any results whatsoever? Going back to various periods of graft in our country. Tammany Hall in New York, which stole money right, left, and center, but at least put up a couple of nice looking buildings. For all the money that's spent on the federal level, nothing has been gained whatsoever. We have had no improvement in the environment. We have no improvement in the infrastructure. The military remains weak, far weaker than it should be. The country's prosperity is nowhere near what it could be, despite all these trillions of dollars in debt and money spent. Ben was exactly right. These funds that we're seeing spent in vast trillions of dollars are nothing more than money laundering for the Democratic Party, its fundraisers, and its supporters.
Ben, there's talk of a $5,000 check to the people. And they're saying, this is just a rebate or a refund of the monies that was taken back from you, which is far greater than we got in COVID. Ben, I submit, people in America, they get a $5,000 check from this, a refund of all the money that was spent in fraud. I'll tell you what, there's going to be cheers in the aisles with this thing, Ben.
Well, look, I understand the politics of that, and it sounds good. Of course, we do have a thing called the Constitution, and it's the Congress that has to grant that. This is the Republican equivalent of what Biden was doing for 4 years in just deciding that students didn't have to pay back their debt. Congress has to make that decision, not the president and not Elon Musk. But again, it makes for great politics. I understand it. I, for one, would opt to see us actually try to balance our budget. So if you pay out the checks to taxpayers, I understand it sounds great, and a lot of people could use that money, but that effectively means you have to borrow that money to fund those checks. That is 100% of that money on the margin will be borrowed. So I don't want to blow all these savings by just deciding we're going to pay out checks. But I do get the politics. It sounds good. It is a way to garner support for the mission of DOGE, which is absolutely critical to the country. So as far as that's concerned, I understand where they're coming from.
Frank, they're saying it's an 80-20. So 20% of it is going to go back to that $5,000. The other 80% is going to pay off the debt.
Yeah, again, I have to agree with Ben. I agree with the politics, I understand the politics of it, but the reality of it is that holding down the debt would be so much better for the country in the long run. It's the same thing when we go back to those COVID checks. Everyone was absolutely thrilled with getting them. And now we're seeing the after effects, the inflation and so forth that resulted from it. It was a disaster. And I think it will be the same thing with the COVID, with the payoff checks as well.
All right. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, let's talk about what's far more important. Instead of a $5,000 rebate gimmick, it is the tax code. Right now, at the end of this year, we're going to have the largest tax hike in the history of this country. It's embedded in our law right now. The Republicans have to get off their rear ends and change that. If you want to grow this economy, you need to make the Trump tax cuts of his first term permanent. They all sunset at the end of this year, and it will result in taxes like we've never seen before. That's what's important. That will dwarf the impact of $5,000 rebates. It is a very meaningful thing to bring certainty to the economy, to investors. The enemy of capital and investment is uncertainty. This administration is doing all the right things, but it is absolutely critical that Congress brings certainty to the tax code. It's what corporate planners have to bet on when they make investment decisions. And so all these announcements of Apple investing $500 billion and all these are all great. This is Donald Trump at his best. And I welcome it and applaud it. And he'll make a lot more announcements like those. But to actually get the money employed and actually get it to work, you need to bring certainty to the tax code. And that is up to Congress. And they've got to get off their rear ends and get focused on fixing this tax issue that is vitally important to the long-term health of this economy.
Frank, you were nodding your head with the tax thing. Go.
Yeah, absolutely. The tax code, and again, I deal with small businesses quite a bit, and they are being destroyed not only by the amount of taxes they have to pay, but the difficulties in compliance. If you're General Motors, you can have a bunch of attorneys and accountants on staff who'll tell you how to comply. If you're a small business, sometimes the cost of figuring out how to comply is more expensive and more onerous than actually complying with it, than actually paying off those taxes. There's got to be certainty. There's got to be a simplification of the tax code. It's got to happen, and it's got to happen soon.
What about this gravy train, Ben, that we've been watching the lefts on, and that kind of goes back to the more of the top of the show here, but the left, they're just going nuts about this.
Well, sure, they're losing their income. This is, if you're in the mafia and a bunch of corporations and small businesses are paying you protection money, and someone comes along like Elliot Ness threatening your cash flow by gathering all these people and protecting them and allowing them to stop paying you all your stolen goods, you're going to fight that every way you can. And in the mafia world, that led to street wars in Chicago when Elliot Ness was fighting them. This is no different. This is a street battle over the gravy train that the Democrats and connected Democrats have been on. And this goes from big hedge funds, I'm not going to name names, but from big, well-known hedge funds all the way down to the Lucretias of the world who get a $20 million grant on her way out of the White House. This is unbelievably illegal. There should be prosecutions of these people. This is nothing but taking your tax money and just doling it out to family and friends all over the place. That's what's been going on. I want to make one quick statement on taxes. The one thing I learned at Solomon Brothers when I was there in the 80s and 90s is that taxes drive deals. The amount of tax work I did on structuring deals around the tax code, it wasn't a little bit, it was a massive part of every deal we worked on. Every merger, every financing was all driven by the tax code.
Wow, there's a little insider trading right there, and we're not going to go to jail like Nancy Pelosi might for insider trading. I'm not saying that, but you just never know. We've got Ben Brunson, Frank Vernuccio with us, and Ben, well, as you heard, he spent some years up there at Solomon Brothers. He's got a couple of books, The Falstaff Enigma and Esther Sling. You can find those at benbrunson.com and amazon.com. Frank Vernuccio, he's with the American Analysis of News and Media. You can find Frank at usagovpolicy.com. This is Wayman Brunson and Vernuccio. Inside the News, we come to you each and every week on this same affiliate station. Tell your neighbors and friends, we've got a whole lot more. Germany just had an election. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? We're going to discuss it on the other side. You might be surprised with the answer. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Wayman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.